Hi there, and welcome to the Look-See. It's August 2025, and I'm riding in the midst of another fierce heat wave. It's so hot here that on the weekend, our local electric co-op couldn't keep up with the demand, and we lost electricity right in the middle of my Intuition 5 class on past lives, future lives. So for me, it was one of those moments of complete gratitude for the generators that we have, as well as a pretty stark reminder that we need to keep thinking about and preparing for a future that may require us to be a little more self-sufficient. So when I asked for a keyword for this month and the Look-See, I got the word seismic, a word that refers to something having a gigantic effect. It also refers to earthquakes and explosions that produce massive vibrations across a wide area of the planet. At first, I wanted to discard the word. I thought maybe I had been influenced by the recent earthquakes in the news, but I decided I'll stick with what came to me and explore it just a little. So we've all heard the term seismic, usually in relation to earthquakes, but perhaps we could take a look at the word as a fair description of what is happening in our world. Our world is being shaken up. We are on the cusp of seismic changes in everything from international relationships, technology, and politics to economics, medicine, education, and even agriculture. Some of those changes will cause some stress, but some are going to open us to a whole new world. If you are over the age of 50, you will probably focus on the changes causing stress because you have prepared for a world that won't be there. If you are younger than the age of 50, you will probably focus on the opportunities brought by the new world. I would suggest that regardless of your age, you keep your eye on the whole thing and ride those waves of change with the same sense of adventure you had when you were 16. Life is a roller coaster ride. You're already on it. So hang on and let the ride give you the thrills and chills of a lifetime. So let's begin. Number one, in the last Look-See of July 23rd, I think it was, might have been the first one in July, I listed 4 possible scenarios that might fit what's now happening. The first one was, it may be that Trump is betraying us and had no intention of making America great again. The next one was, it may be that he has made some serious mistakes in judgment and is now trying to correct them. The third one was that he, Trump, may be a puppet controlled by Netanyahu and the Zionist cabal, and he is doing his best to serve 2 masters. And the fourth one, Trump may be deliberately destroying the economy and the relationships that the U.S. had in an effort to break the back of the globalists and their grip on us. He may be trying to force the United States to become self-sufficient once more because that self-sufficiency was deliberately destroyed by the globalist system. He may be deliberately acting in a contradictory and confusing manner on purpose to force us to withdraw all trust and support from the system that has been so corrupt for the last 50 years, the last 6 of which we have begun to feel the sting of that corruption and to wake up. So a lot of people wrote to say they thought scenario 4 was happening. But now here is something else to think about that kind of combines a little bit of scenario 3 and scenario 4 and adds a twist. As we watch what's unfolding, the question arises, are we watching a war among billionaires? A war among billionaires that has nothing to do with national governments and nations. And I mean, it involves them, but the primary thing being a war among billionaires. There are Russian oligarchs supporting Vladimir Putin. There are European oligarchs having their way in the EU and running NATO. There are American oligarchs supporting Donald Trump, while other oligarchs fund everything they can to fight him. There are transnational oligarchs, Soros, Bill Gates, that are trying to destroy nations or get rid of as many people as possible. There are Zionist oligarchs running Israel who want to run the entire world. Cartel oligarchs who want a bigger piece of the action in terms of both money and land. And there's some Chinese oligarchs offering to fund a good future if everyone will just stop fighting. The oligarchs are generally CEOs of big international corporations who began pulling the strings of governments a long time ago. Once the string pulling began, it was only a matter of time before they would begin using their money to put leaders in place who would make the decisions they favored. From there, it was only a hop, skip, and a jump to stepping into high-placed government positions to run things directly. Is that how Donald Trump came to power in the US? If we look closely, Trump continues to walk with one leg on each side of the fence. With one leg, he's working to please the American people. With the other leg, he is trying to play nice with the deep state Zionist cabal billionaires and making decisions that favor Israel in almost every case. Why? Obviously, he either likes and supports Israel completely, or he is completely controlled by Israel. However, putting that aside for the moment, it looks to me like he's trying to wrest control of America from the grip of the Zionist oligarchs while still moving in tandem with them toward a world run by businesses. It appears that he truly wants to make America great again, but not to restore it to what it was. Instead, he appears to want it for himself. And like any good owner or manager, he is setting things up to make it run smoothly, look beautiful, with healthy people in a reindustrialized nation that makes some money and that he can be proud of. It's a sort of like a benevolent dictator kind of approach. Is Donald Trump planning to remake America in his image with all new money, all new media, all new industry, and all new housing and transport? Other elite billionaires are in control of other countries, and together, this whole group of billionaires looks like it will both cooperate and compete with one another until the entire capitalist and socialist system comes apart. Why will it come apart? Because you can't run a civilization the way you manage a corporation. The bottom line for a corporation is profit. People are expensive and generally not profitable. But get rid of the people, and you have no reason for the corporations to exist. So do these billionaire oligarchs know what they are setting up? There are multiple bottom lines for civilization, not just profit. Those multiple bottom lines include security, stability, peace, family, order, beauty, cooperation, love, honor, truth, and those are just the starters. Add those bottom lines to individual bottom lines. So the first set is civilizational bottom lines. And now we also have individual bottom lines of creativity, purpose, inventiveness, health, and personal growth. And you have a corporate versus civilizational mismatch of unreconcilable, even monstrous differences. Trump is definitely better than Biden and the Democrats, but he may not be what people think he is. He may have to play along with the deep state, Zionist cabal to some degree, or he's out of the game. He has to walk a fine line long enough to get full control of the U.S. again, long enough to get his country in good shape so it can sustain itself. It has to become productive again and begin to make money, because who wants to run a country that doesn't have anything to sell, whose people are too sick and degenerated to work, and whose economy is a black hole? If the U.S. was a house needing repairs and restoration, we would probably take one look at it and say, that's a money pit. Trump wants to remodel and rehabilitate the house so he has a country that is competitive, beautiful, and even productive, even self-sufficient. Wow. If Trump is walking with one leg on each side of the fence, trying to please the American people while getting rid of the old oligarchs who have had control of the U.S. for the last 5 decades, here's the thing to watch for. Some of the controls he will have to put in place in order to maintain control, remove deep state players, and prevent them from sneaking back in. Those things that he will have to put in place are not going to look good to the American people. And this will make or be a major block to his whole agenda. People are going to take that personally and not see what he's trying to do. He's trying to prevent the re-takeover. So, his efforts to make America healthy again will also have roadblocks, including food shortages that cannot be legislated away and food prices that people can't afford. This will result in people ignoring government in order to take care of their own needs. The long and the short of all of this is that many will continue to see Trump through the lens of, wow, best president ever, doing what he said he would do. But those who don't like him will see only the leg on the cabal's side of the fence and the fact that he's playing ball with them. And those who have had enough of it all will withdraw to take care of themselves and their families. This will deepen the divide in American attitudes and consciousness, and we will likely see the land split as a reflection of what is happening between the Americans on one side who love Trump, those who hate him, and those who have moved past the whole theater and gone on to write their own show. Number 2. The Genius Act was passed by Congress and signed by Donald Trump a few weeks ago in July. I think it was July 18th, maybe. When I mentioned above that Trump may be remaking the U.S. and would set up a whole new money system, this Genius Act may be what he is putting in place. This act will have an enormous impact on our financial system and the way we think about the world, ownership, assets, and money. There are dozens of direct impacts this act is going to have, but let's just look at what I consider the top 10, each of which will bring powerful changes if we agree to this. A, the rules of ownership are being rewritten using the blockchain, and that includes tokenization, faster settlement, fractional ownership, efficient markets applied to real estate bonds and money, which all become programmable code with control held by those writing the code. Tokenization is when real assets become digital records stored on blockchain. The records represent ownership. Let me say that again. The records represent ownership of physical things like property, shares, or government debt, such as bonds. And these tokens can be bought and sold in seconds. C, the token is not the asset. The token is not the asset. It is a claim managed by a custodian or institution. This creates a layer of abstraction or separation from the asset. You own a programmable promise enforced by code and private systems. But if there's a problem, settlement may be governed by programmable rules instead of full legal title. D, the ability to live in the asset, sell the asset, or use the asset can be restricted by the code and subject to surveillance, remote enforcement, or compliance triggers. Wow. E, these are private systems that only approved people can use. They don't run on public networks. They run under the direct control of the corporations and institutions that build them. And this act gives corporations and institutions the right to build these systems. F, this is not open finance. It is programmable infrastructure owned by large corporations. G, the ability to hold, use, or transfer your token depends on the code and the permission of those who operate the blockchain. This can be done remotely and without warning. Access could be restricted by conditions you did not agree to or cannot change. H, this is a fundamental change. Asset ownership becomes conditional, subject to rules and gatekeepers. Control once exercised through courts and contracts now happens through code. Those who control the code control the access to your wealth. I, the same institutions that built the old system are now building the new one with even more control embedded at the infrastructure level. And J, those without digital IDs or banking access, often those who are unbanked or off-grid, will be excluded entirely. Says Miles Harris, quote, efficiency is the bait. Control is the hook. Tokenization is not about inclusion or innovation. It's about programmable ownership, automated enforcement, and institutional dominance. Although this is presented as efficiency, it is also automation of enforcement. Conditions are built into the asset itself. The payments, the ownership, and regulatory checks happen automatically. Rules coded into a token can't be bypassed, interpreted by courts, or even reviewed by humans. They are executed by machines. End quote. So I was dismayed by all of this, but when looking ahead, there are some benefits to this system as long as it is not the only system of money that we have. I have long seen that there are multiple forms of money and currency in the future. While I was growing up, it was absolutely against the law to print counterfeit money. As I look ahead, the legal right for corporations and institutions to create digital forms of money breaks that long-held ban on creating counterfeit money. An entire complex of rules grows up in the future around the newer digital money, but it looks like the great benefit is that there are a number of different kinds of money using, and people use differing forms of money for different purposes, purchases, and investments. Use one kind of money for buying your groceries, some other kind of money for paying your house payment, et cetera, et cetera. This persists for some time into the future until trust in the financial system has been reestablished. And then it looks like the rules get revised quite a bit. So we're in for some interesting times here. Number 3, this has been said 1,000 times, 1,000 ways, but I'm going to say it again. Keep some cash. Use some cash. Money has been weaponized, and you are totally dependent on money to get what you need to survive. So if you only have digital money that someone else controls, they could pull the plug and you would be screwed. Don't put yourself in a situation where the government, a corporation, or an institution could get mad at you and turn off your money. I'm just saying. Number 4. For a long time, a very long time, I have been seeing huge difficulties in the U.S. Some of these were financial collapse, the breakup of the U.S., societal chaos, increasing disease and death due to not enough food, and I have tried to warn people without upsetting them too much. Several times I have said, we are at the fork in the road. It's time to choose. But over the past month or two, I am seeing that huge numbers of people are moving in the right direction. We are tipping in a better direction than before. We're moving past that tipping point and we're tipping in the right direction. I was thrilled to see that. So there may still be some difficulties, and it looks like food will still be a problem. So be aware that you may have to grow some of what you eat. Growing some of your own food, however, adds to your sense of security, can result in better health, sometimes becomes a reason to trade with others, and can become one of the small pleasures in life. If you can't grow some of your food, it might be helpful to expand your cooking and food preparation skills. When I was at rock bottom at one point in my life, I had water and an onion. I asked myself the question, what can I do with water and an onion? And that started me on a journey that was life-saving. You might start elsewhere with a different question. Maybe, what did people used to eat a couple hundred years ago? That would be an eye-opener. Wow. Back then, people had their main meal for breakfast, which was eaten in late morning, and a lighter meal in late afternoon. They also ate just enough to satisfy their hunger. No gorging, no eating everything on the table, because they weren't always sure that there would be something to eat the next day. And they were very mindful of pacing those meals. Main meals were salt pork, cornbread, beef or rabbit stew, potatoes or whatever vegetables were available, and a variety of heavy breads soaked in fat-based gravies. Nothing went to waste. There were no sweetened, chemicalized, processed foods. So just for a moment, stop and think about what you've been eating for the last decade. Your body has adjusted to your diet as best it can. Your consciousness has also adjusted to that diet. Now, just imagine what would happen to both body and mind if you had a drastic change of diet. Think about that. Number 5. It looks like there are some arrests in the U.S. that get a lot of attention. However, it looks like these are really, I'm going to say lower level people, and not the big names like Clinton, Obama, etc. Still, they are names that people recognize right away. I thought maybe it was Adam Schiff or someone like him. So I hope you are all aware that a lot of people who were involved in criminal and even treasonous activities made deals with those doing the cleanup operations. Because of those deals, we won't see them going to jail. They know who they are. And, you know, when I have tuned into some of them in the past, they were almost like relieved to have been caught and offered a deal if they would cooperate. Some were even anxious to cooperate. So our task in all of this is first to be grateful that so many people caught in the blackmail traps were willing to cooperate with the takedown of those traps and the people running them. Second, we should realize that the authorities may be dragging their feet around the release of the Epstein files because they don't want those implicated to have their lives ruined further if those people have been cooperating and helping with the cleanup. And third, our job is to let go of naivete and pay attention to what is happening in the shadows and behind the curtain. We must stay watchful, speak, and take action if things start going sideways again. Number 6. President Trump and President Putin are going to meet in Alaska to maybe, emphasis on the word maybe, settle the war in Ukraine. If they don't come to some kind of agreement, we will have war. However, I have long seen that we would go right to the edge of war and then it would stop, which would surprise everyone. I hope that will be the case. Anyway, the call for Trump and Putin to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and the right to self-determination makes me laugh. Sovereignty means having autonomy. It means having the authority to make the decisions that run your country. It means being free from external control. Since when has Ukraine been sovereign? It's a joke. Even before the US-led Maidan coup, Ukraine was steeped in corruption. Zelensky has never been in charge. He's only a puppet for those who used Ukraine for every kind of ugly, hurtful activity imaginable. To maintain sovereignty, one needs power, cooperation, respect, or great fear, and an alignment with the people. Zelensky campaigned on a platform of ending corruption. He was elected in 2019, and by 2020, it was obvious he was betraying the Ukrainian people. He was just another puppet in a long line of puppets controlled by European and American oligarchs. Whenever I tune into Zelensky, I see the same thing, that he was hired and put in place to stand in the public square and shout at the Russians, "How dare you invade us? How dare you think you can take our land? How dare you kill our people?" When the truth is that Ukraine was invaded and taken over decades ago by unscrupulous governments and oligarchs. Zelensky was shelling and bombing his own people in eastern Ukraine as if that land was not part of Ukraine. And the human trafficking, adrenochrome operations, child sex trafficking, and money laundering was completely out of control. It was off the charts. In my humble opinion, Ukraine sold itself and its sovereignty down the river a long time ago. It doesn't have a clue what sovereignty, human rights, or autonomy are. Number 7. Speaking of Zelensky, it looks like he is going to be removed. He will go kicking and screaming into the night. We will have to see who replaces him. Maybe Zaluzhny? Hopefully not. He's just another puppet being groomed by European oligarchs to do as they tell him in Ukraine. If Zaluzhny does come on board, it will be for a short time and for a much smaller Ukraine. And then someone is appointed by Russia to step in. So this meeting is a huge turning point in the world, especially for the U.S. It marks the beginning of the end of the war in Ukraine. It marks the official beginning of a multipolar world. It marks the end of U.S. hegemony, but not the end of U.S. influence or power. There's a change, but not a collapse. It marks the beginning of a long, slow shift in the direction of something that is, I was trying to think of how to say what I saw. It's not exactly religion, but I'm not sure what to call it. It's a combination of belief in something greater than ourselves, a growing spirit of listening and cooperation, and a slow return of pride in ourselves and our country. There's a toning down of the fear rhetoric around nuclear war, artificial intelligence, transhumanism, advanced technology, and all of the talk of surveillance, control, digital ID, and technocracy. This is not to say that these issues disappear and that you can go back to sleep, back to sitting on the couch, ignoring what's happening in our world. Quite the contrary. These are all issues that we must pay attention to, understand, contribute our voice to, and around which we must make decisions. Number 8. The Trump-Putin meeting is a pivot point that takes apart the last of the irrational plans of those who were insisting on a new world order and a one world government. They may try for one last massive false flag event, but it looks as though their plans are interfered with and they can't pull it off. Fingers crossed there. Several times I have seen what looks like a big event coming that affects all of us deeply. Lots of people keep saying that something big is coming. A few have said they feel like they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. I have occasionally seen something that looks like a big natural disaster. It is a disaster, but it doesn't feel like it is natural. And it's vague, and it moves around. A coastline is involved, and electricity goes out, but that's as much as I've been able to see. And after watching this for several months, I think it is that one last try for a massive false flag event that I just mentioned, but I don't think it actually happens, and that's why it keeps moving around, as if they can't quite figure out where they could pull it off. So stay alert. Number 9, I saw spiritual communities forming in the ethers. These invisible community energies eventually began taking shape as fledgling physical communities. These fledglings are places where people have pulled away and they're focused on learning to survive and to find a place where they can feel a sense of security and belonging. These communities eventually stabilize and begin to manage themselves more and more successfully. They're pretty chaotic in the beginning. At first, they looked like they were ignoring government completely, but as they developed, many of them seemed to take the position that they were holding a space of love for humanity, creating communities of stability and self-sufficiency, and ready to help in case things become extremely difficult in the world. They saw themselves as places of refuge. I thought that was great. So they're not here yet, but they're starting to form. The energies are forming. Number 10, speaking of places of refuge, the people of Western Europe, the people of Western Europe look almost more dazed and uncertain than the people of America. Germany struggles seriously with its situation and ends up making an agreement with Russia for oil. France, Italy, and Greece do okay, but they try belatedly to make laws around the assimilation of those people who invaded their country during the unchecked immigration. And that's not very successful. Big fights over those. Some countries send immigrants back, but a lot of Europeans leave and migrate to live elsewhere. And I thought it was kind of funny that quite a few of them go to African nations, which is where the migrants came from. It's like, okay, we'll trade places. Like, oh my God. The majority, however, the Europeans that leave Europe go to South America. Brussels goes through a serious recession. There's something of a rebellion in the Netherlands. That was like, we've had enough kind of thing. The Baltic countries look like they were talking about merging. Denmark remains quite neutral. I don't know much about Denmark, but it looked like it's kind of like let's copy Switzerland. Poland joins forces with one or two other countries, almost like annexing. Great Britain suffers greatly and becomes a captive land for a while. Ireland almost goes down. but manages to turn things around at the last minute. Portugal and Spain go backwards economically and culturally for some time, maybe a decade, before they start like reorganizing and moving forward. There's a bit of a renaissance in the Georgia and Caucasus region, and Turkey grows more powerful. So that's as much as I saw. Lots of change in Europe. Wow. Number 11, the U.S. officially formed in 1776. That was 250 years ago. But before that July 4th declaration, there was more than a century of people leaving the chaos of Europe and traveling here. Why were they coming here? What were they seeking? They were coming here for the freedom. The huge driver behind the formation of the U.S. was freedom. Back in the Middle Ages, there were kings and queens, but the Catholic Church was really running things, and the church had its hands around the neck of every aspect of daily life. Once Martin Luther posted his 95 opinions and calls for reform on October 31st, 1517, Halloween, there began a stream of open complaints and arguments that started the Reformation in Europe. The Reformation was a revolution. It was a revolution against the authority of the Catholic Church. And as the revolution spread, a profusion of new churches began to appear. Churches are basically started by men. When a church becomes corrupt or begins teaching something that other men don't like, those men go start their own church and make new rules to suit themselves. Suddenly, there was a proliferation of new churches appearing everywhere, which brought confusion and chaos everywhere. The more new churches appeared, the greater the conflict and confusion grew. And only 100 years later, people were leaving Europe and sailing to America, which was a really dangerous trip. What were they looking for? Again, it was freedom. Those early immigrants probably weren't thinking like this, but the move to North America was part of an evolutionary drive to get beyond physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual control as much as possible. They wanted to take charge of their own lives. They wanted freedom. Only in freedom can you experience the results of your decisions and learn from them. And only if you can learn from your mistakes and be free to correct them can you continue evolving toward full human potential. America has a destiny. That destiny is to learn the secrets of nature, understand the nature of consciousness, use that consciousness wisely to shape their experience, and help move the civilization into higher dimensions of existence. The concept of freedom is the central balancing principle of a spectrum that has slavery at one end and anarchy at the other. Freedom and libertarianism are somewhere in the middle. Slavery means that your life and work is completely subject to someone else's goodwill, their authority, their sense of order, and decision-making. You, the individual, have no say in anything if you are a slave. Anarchy is the opposite. It means that your life and work is completely devoid of any external authority and decision-making. It is a state of supreme individual authority. that acknowledges no laws except those wanted by the individual. Libertarianism, which slides over closer to the anarchy end of the spectrum, means holding individual freedom to be of the highest value. And libertarians are not concerned with the good of others or what others may want. They don't care. Freedom is in the middle of all these positions. Be aware that freedom on a desert island, that's one thing. But freedom in a civilization is something else. Freedom in a civilization is not totally free. It means you honor the order set up by the group and follow laws based on respect for human life. It means consideration of what others want and the willingness to act in a personally responsible manner while maintaining good relationships and developing your skills and potentials. We have seen slavery in this country, and we have recently seen a lot of libertarian rhetoric and behavior. We've even witnessed some of the lawlessness and disorder of anarchy. Today, we are at a crossroads. We're at a tipping point, as I mentioned. Our future will be much better if we stick to the path of evolving ourselves. When I look ahead, it has looked a little rough, but it looks like we are going to skinny through, and we'll do that by maintaining a population of spiritually awake and aware people who keep on working together, even if they don't know one another, don't know if what they're doing is helpful, but they hope it is, and often feel like they're just peeing into the wind and it all blows right back at them. We are starting to move in the right direction, so let's keep going. That's it for this look-see. So for those who are watching or listening for the first time, the look-see is a brief look at what is happening in our world and where the big trends are headed. Reality is not fixed. Let me say that again. Reality is not fixed, and we are changing it. It's very dynamic, and it changes according to what we are doing with our consciousness. Nothing becomes real until we make it real. We make a choice, take some kind of action, put something together, or take it apart. Those decisive actions are what determine the path and the outcome. Of course, once we set something in motion, it takes a lot to make a change or get things going in another direction. And that is exactly the reason for looking ahead. If we don't like what we see or the direction things are going, we can make appropriate changes in a timely way or prepare for what may look inevitable. If we see something we like, we can put some conscious attention on that outcome and help things along. It's important to look ahead and assess what's happening and where are we going, so that we know whether or not we need to do something different. So thank you so much for listening. Keep your eyes open and your wits about you. And we'll see you in September. Take care.